Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news. This is Bloomberg Businessweek, insight from the reporters and editors that bring you America's most trusted business magazine, plus global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Businessweek with Carol Massar and Tim Stenovec on Bloomberg Radio.
It is Bloomberg Business Week. As Carol mentioned, and as we've been talking about, stocks taking a real turn lower on the day today. The S&P 500 down 1.7%. It does still put us in positive territory for year to date. So far this year, up 2.2% on the S&P 500. Taking a look at this week, though, we are down 2% on the NASDAQ. The S&P 500 down 1.7%.
All right. Well, our Bloomberg Intelligence team out with a note this week about AI in the asset management business. Kevin Ryan and Lento Tang writing that generative AI is a, quote, game-changing technology. They go on to say rapid progress over the past year means generative AI looks like a must-have tool for all asset managers. Generative AI, yeah, exactly, can now be embedded in all an asset manager's workflows, enabling most internal processes to be automated. It can also be more widely personalized for use in investment selection. So it sounds like a huge help.
Do we even need people?
Well, we always need people.
We always. I don't know.
I'm going to hold on to
I wouldn't. Hey, you better be careful what you say. Curious what Anna Kooi thinks about this.
Crossed.
She's partner and national financial services leader at the accounting firm Wipfli. She joins us from Chicago. We're asking you because Wipfli is just out with a survey of asset managers where I know AI and the new technology came up. We're going to go there, but first, we saw quite a sell-off today. I know you talked to a lot of clients. Given the volatility that we've seen of late, the concern around the economic outlook, what are you hearing from your clients right now?
Yeah, interestingly enough, part of our survey, we did ask the industry what they felt the outlook was for 2025. About 90% of them are projecting that they're going to still grow in 2025, with the majority of them saying 5% or higher. So I think we're seeing a sell-off today, but many believe that we're going to see a turnaround for the remainder of the year.
So not nervous? So like if you had to say, more nervous but confident, or is that how you see it, or just confident?
I would say nerves but confident. Yes, Carol, that's a good way to say it.
All right. Love that. Love that. Having said that, what is top of mind for them? We did a nice, kind of lead up to you in terms of AI. What is top of mind for asset managers, though? Is it the environment? Is it having the tools that they need? Is it trying to figure out how to use AI? What is top of mind for them?
Yeah, I think many of them right now are trying to figure out and ideate around what technology is going to play for them in the future, whether it is AI, a lot of data and analytics, looking to streamline the efficiencies, as well as continuing to advise and focus more on those client relationships.
So where does this show up in sort of the chain of the services that they offer? Does it show up on the side of, okay, well, we've got AI to help automate and, increase our margins, so we're going to make more money? Or do they become better at managing our assets? Do we make more money having put money with them?
I think you're going to see it in both spots, Tim. I think you're going to see them using it to automate and how they're engaging with their clients, as well as around some of the regulatory compliance. But then you're also going to see it in how they're doing investment strategies, and which then does lead into the consumer making more money as well.
Anna, is it a situation where the folks that have a lot of money to put to work, they're still going to get person to person kind of care. And then those who maybe don't have as much money.
Like how much do you need to get a phone call, Carol?
Right.
That's what I want to know.
Exactly. Or like I have a concern about my portfolio versus.
How much do you have for them to pick up the phone?
Can you answer that?
I don't think they've determined that yet. But I do think that it's going to be a hybrid of both, right? Folks aren't going to only want to have the AI doing their investing. They're still going to want to have that relationship. But I think you're going to see AI continuing to help them to do it in a more personalized way, as well as more efficient.
Do you feel comfortable? Would you feel comfortable?
What? Feel comfortable with what?
Essentially like with a chatbot, like kind of playing around with your investments or something?
It's a very good question because I think the rise of the robo-advisor predates the fact that people are thinking about using AI in these workflows.
Yeah.
Robo-advisors just set it and forget it. The asset allocation is there based on, years of modern portfolio
like models,
theory.
right? Yeah,
you
modeling.
think of like a Wealthfront or a Betterment. Schwab has the intelligent portfolio. So, yeah, I think
Just
I would be
another,
comfortable. Yeah,
like, version or, like,
yeah, but you're
leg
not going
up.
to get. I mean, look, jump on in here, Anna. You're not going to get the same service that the asset managers you speak to are that you're going to get with like one of these automated investment portfolios.
Yeah,
you're
you're
not going to
still
get
going to
tax
want to
planning.
have your advisor talking to you about what your strategies are, where you're at in your family life cycle, all of those future endeavors, right? But we all know, and study has shown, sometimes emotions being part of our investment decisions, don't always make money for us. Many times they lose money for us. So taking that out and having it be more automated can be a good strategy.
How are they accessing AI?
That's exactly what I was going to ask.
You and I, it's a mind meld.
Well, so maybe we won't be replaced.
Maybe we
by
are
AI.
just an AI robot. Yeah. No, but because Tim and I are increasingly having these conversations with our own in-house tech folks who follow AI, and it's just there's different models. We keep hearing about maybe commoditization of AI. So just trying to figure out where they're going for it.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some struggles around the data and the quality around being able to implement some of the architecture that's going to be needed, data privacy and security concerns. What are we going to see around regulatory scrutiny?
No, but cost. I mean, is it like OpenAI? Is it ChatGPT? Is it Gemini? Like, where are they?
You're going to see. Yeah. You're going to see some agentic AI, yes. But I think you're also going to see on the front side, but you're also going to see AI being used on the back as well.
What does that mean? Wait, what do you mean then? So they're layering obviously like software and stuff on all of
Correct.
this. So, I mean, is there a model that seems to dominate at this point, or an LLM that seems to dominate, at least for the asset management world?
Not currently, but there's many of them that are being exploratory, and ideated. And I think we'll see maybe one coming out as the leader, but nothing currently.
Okay, that's interesting to hear. Mm-hmm. Hey, something that I've been watching closely in this world is thinking about the rise of ETFs and the way active versus passive is really dominated the conversation over the last few years. Are asset managers, in your view, still bringing value to their clients when portfolios that have really just hugged the benchmarks of the S&P have performed so well over the past decade?
I mean, are you asking if the ETFs are going to continue to outperform?
No, I'm asking if people are still seeing value in asset managers, given that passive investing has done so well.
Kind of the active versus passive argument that we've talked about.
Yeah, well, I think you don't have 100% of your population that's willing to go the passive route, right? And many want that advisor to be there to really have that relationship, understand where they're at in their family. In their life cycle, and help guide them into some of those decisions. That's where I think the difference is going to be when we talk, robo-advising versus continuing to have the hybrid. It's a trust factor.
Yeah.
And you guys mentioned it earlier, right?
Yeah.
Would you trust only having AI do it 100%? I mean, that's where you're going to continue to see the advisor play a significant role going forward.
Yeah.
I asked a doctor friend of mine if AI is going to take his job, and he replied, "Would you be comfortable getting on an airplane that is only flown on autopilot?"
Sometimes yes.
And I said, "Well, you're not a radiologist, but I do think radiology is a field in medicine that is ripe for disruption for AI." But he does surgery, so
yeah. But you could have a robot, like robotic surgery, right? Like you think about, I don't know. Hey, listen, Anna, thanks so much. It's a little bit of a wacky Friday, and we appreciate you joining us on such
Anna's
a
like,
day.
"What are you talking about?" It's fine, Anna.
Anna Kooi, she's partner and national financial services leader at Wipfli, joining us from Chicago. This is Bloomberg.
Well, as soon as I started reading this Substack post earlier this week from Kyla Scanlon, I knew we had to get her on Bloomberg Businessweek to talk about it. You all know Kyla. She's a former associate at Capital Group. She's now a TikTok star. She's a financial educator and commentator. She's a blogger. She contributes to Bloomberg Opinion. She's the author of the fantastic book, In This Economy, how money and markets really work. We spoke to her last spring when that book came out.
And I have to say, Tim's been talking about having her on and about a post that got his attention. It was entitled Gen Z and the End of Predictable Progress, How AI Volatility and Changing Institutions Are Shaping Young People's Economic Reality. You're going to want to sit down and listen, because I think many would agree that this is a lot of what's going on in society today.
Kyla, welcome back. You spent a lot of time on the road over the last 8 months, traveling around the U.S. You talked with economists. You spoke at universities. The essay really a reflection on that. Are the kids all right?
Yeah, the kids are all right. I think they're concerned. So I traveled to over 20 states over the past 8 months, talking about my book. And when I have the opportunity to talk about my book, I also have the opportunity to talk to students, to talk to people in the audience. Just wherever I'm going, I have an opportunity to talk to people about how they're experiencing the economy. And there's a lot of uncertainty. People are really worried that the concept of a career is going to go away entirely because of AI. And then that's all being compounded by political uncertainty right now. And so I think there's just a lot of fear in the economy at the moment.
Kyla, you talk to an old person, they're going to say, yeah, we've heard this before, go during, the Vietnam War, or grandparents go back to World War II. Like that was a time of, there was times of uncertainty. Nobody even knew if we were going to survive it through. So what do you say to that? And what is potentially different this time around?
Yeah, of course. Every generation has had to deal with their own uncertainty. And the fact that younger people are dealing with uncertainty too doesn't negate the uncertainty that came before the very particular experience that they're having. I think right now we have a very quick moving technological revolution that's happening with AI. Nobody really knows how that's going to impact the workforce. There's been talks of changing social constructs. Jobs have been, replaced. There's questions of if jobs will just be augmented. There's just a lot of uncertainty right there. And then I think with the new administration, there's just a lot of switch ups. And so I think you have that political uncertainty happening at the same time that you have potential economic destabilization because of AI and what it could do. Hopefully it does just good things, but nobody knows, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think there's always been uncertainty, but right now it's very, very present for a lot of people.
You argue that there are three different groups within Gen Z. Certainly no generation is a monolith, but who are the three different groups and how have their experiences varied?
Yeah, of course. I think generational grouping, everybody knows it's fraught with error, but I think that the very particular experience of Gen Z, so I'm an old Gen Z, there's the bridge generation, which is the Gen Z 1.0 that I'm a part of. So I remember a world where there wasn't smartphones. Like I remember a world where everything wasn't online all of the time. And I graduated into the workforce during the pandemic. People who are part of Gen Z 1.5, they're the COVID cohort. They were in high school, they were in college during the pandemic. That totally shaped how they interact with technology. It totally shapes how they interact with the economy. And then there's Gen Z 2.0, which are the digital natives. And what I wrote in the article, which I think might be a little bit true, where digital reality is just another layer of reality. There's no actual separation. Everything is completely intertwined for this younger generation. And of course, these are all very broad generalizations. It doesn't apply to every single person, but I think that's the thematic that we're seeing across these three cohorts.
Kyla, you can't let the genie out. Once the genie's out of the box, it's out of the box. But having said that, if social media wasn't so pervasive in our world, would we be maybe having a different conversation about the younger generation?
I think so. There's been a lot of really good research from a lot of really, really smart people on how social media is impacting young people. I think that there definitely is a lot of issues with comparison, a lot of issues with kind of creating an idea that maybe the traditional path isn't the best way to go because you could just do a meme coin. And there's all of these really influential TikTokers who portray this lifestyle that I think people look at on social media, start comparing themselves. So I think social media has definitely complicated the reality that we live in. And of course, it's provided massive benefits as well, but it's definitely made things more complex.
What's the way to figure out a way to survive in this economy, though, or not just survive, to thrive in this economy? Mm-hmm. Because it is one of creative destruction. I mean, you write about, or technological creative destruction, you write about this idea that, okay, on the one hand, you have this shortage of folks in the trades, and there's a real push to get, this idea of a tool belt generation. On the other end of this, you see people who are making an entire year's salary with one social media post. Like, what's the way to actually live and thrive in this economy?
Yeah, a lot of people are living and thriving in the economy. There's definitely a middle path. Like when in the article, I make it so clear that I'm generalizing, that I'm not being very nuanced just for the sake of making a point. I think there's a lot of younger people who are looking at AI as a tool. And so what they're doing is being really adaptable. They're saying, okay, I'm going to learn how this tool works. I'm going to figure out if it can help my work. And I'm just going to keep up with all of the trends that are happening. So hopefully I can stay on top of anything that might be disruptive to the career path that I want to go down. And so I think that's the big thing that I've learned from a lot of people over the past couple of months is everybody's just trying to be adaptable. They're trying to pick up new skills and new tools all of the time because, you know, in the age of uncertainty, that's just what you have to do. You have to be a learner, not a learned.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. And I think about in the political environment we are, which is so divisive. And I think some would argue that, you know, so many of the lawmakers down in Washington are a lot older. And you do wonder whether, you know, they are on top of what needs to be in terms of policy to meet what's needed for the younger generation. And I'm just curious how you kind of roll that into it.
Yeah, there's a lot of good research on that as well. I mean, I think the main thing that a lot of younger people are facing right now is a housing crisis, which I feel like lawmakers maybe aren't able to internalize. There was a chart today from out of Apollo that was talking that the median age of buying a home, I believe, is 56 years old in 2024. In 1981, the median age of home buyers was 31 years old.
Wow.
And so I think that's just like a big thing that policymakers, for whatever reason, haven't been able to act on. And I think that would be a really quick way to solving some of the economic issues that some people are facing in terms of mobility, in terms of building wealth. And so I do think maybe age could get in the way of understanding that issue.
Your essay also touches on politics a little bit. And given the number crunching that we've seen since the election, a lot of hay has been made about this move rightward among young people, a more conservative move among young people. Is that what you found anecdotally?
I think a lot of people from the states that I visited did vote for Trump, who maybe wouldn't have voted for him before. There's been a lot of good research on this as well. John Byrne Murdoch, Derek Thompson from The Atlantic just recently wrote about this. But what I found anecdotally, and you know the data actually supports this, was VoteCast data, is that most people were just concerned about the economy. They were looking for some sort of solution. They want prices to go down. And so I think that's what a lot of young people put their hopes in with Donald Trump. Whether or not that will happen, who knows? But that's what I noticed. It wasn't a sense of malice. It was just like, we really want prices to be lower.
So it's not that they're necessarily now conservatives. It's just a case of looking at how far their money goes.
Right, exactly. Like a lot of these younger voters, if you look at the AP VoteCast data, you know, they were more so concerned about the economy than concerned about immigration. They were more so concerned about healthcare, student debt, rather than anything else. And so it's kind of these big bucket items that I think they wanted fast and different solutions on. And so they voted a different way because of that.
You have a section of the essay that is called Our Fiscal Reality. What is the fiscal reality that we face right now, that these young people face?
I think a lot of, I mean, it's what everybody's facing, right? I think it's a little hard to escape in terms of the news cycle and just sort of the dismantling that we're seeing happening at the governmental level with things like DOGE, where there's mass firings and, you know, subsequent rehirings in some cases. There's all sorts of lawsuits happening. There's tariffs happening. We got consumer sentiment data today showing that people are quite concerned about tariffs and the inflationary impact that those could have. And then, of course, there's the geopolitics, where it's now quite confusing to figure out how the United States is positioning itself in terms of the geopolitical stage. And so I think there's, as always, you know, there's more questions than answers for young people and pretty much everybody as we're watching what's unfolding.
What's fascinating too, in listening to you and your post, is that We're talking about a younger generation, younger folks that are across the United States that you've been talking to, and yet we have an aging population, right? Where more and more folks are older, which is problematic, right? We talk about it here in terms of a really healthy, thriving economy. Whether we talk about then Japan, what had happened there, and we're just watching it happen around the developed world. But you tap into that a little bit as well.
Yeah, no, the demographic crisis is definitely one of the biggest issues that the United States is facing. I have a different newsletter on that specific topic, particularly around the idea of the demographic crisis in dating apps and, fertility rates and replacement rates and how we really you need to figure that out. But in terms of the aging population, a large part of government spending, as you all know, is Social Security and Medicare. And I have a chart in the newsletter. Social Security is 29% of spending growth from 2024 to 2034. Medicare is 25%. And then interest is another 23%. So the government paying interest on that debt load. And so I think when you look at things like that, people have to pay into Social Security. And if you have an aging population and you don't have enough young people paying into that program, you have all sorts of problems coming around. And so I think that's the biggest concern that a lot of people have been pointing out is, the scale is tipping in a way that it might not be sustainable to have these programs in the future.
Do you think we will, and this is a little out of the lane of your most recent post, and you said you're working on a post about this, but do you think we're going to face a demographic crisis in the U.S. because there is so much concern about the cost of raising kids right now?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about the sandwich generation, right? So the Gen Xers, a lot of them and older millennials, they're dealing with elder care, which is extraordinarily expensive, and they're dealing with childcare, which is also extraordinarily expensive. And so you have this group of people that's being squeezed on both ends, and other people are, watching that happen, and childcare has just gone through the roof in terms of cost. And I think it's pretty unaffordable for most people. And so I think if that continues, it could absolutely deter people from having children and absolutely exacerbate the demographic crisis. And then if you think about, the policies around immigration, that's going to exacerbate our demographic crisis as well, because we won't have those new inflows of younger people. And so there's kind of that dual force happening that could put more pressure on our demographic situation for sure.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Kyla, thank you so much. Kyla Scanlon, contributor at Bloomberg Opinion. Her book, of course, In This Economy, How Money and Markets Really Work. Really appreciate all this time that you gave us on this Friday.
Yeah, check out her Substack.